This week on Quality Digest Live, we learn why optimism should never be confused with complacency.
Plus, getting strategic about strategic planning. That and more when we come back.
Today's sponsor of Quality Digest Live is Hexagon Metrology. Hexagon carries the widest range of quality brands. With an extensive support network, Hexagon is also your partner. Hexagon Metrology. We are metrology.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for November 22nd, 2013. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest Editor-in-Chief, Dirk Ducharme. Well, you know how we talk a lot about the importance of metrology, physical metrology? Well, for 5 full days last October, 53 students from 29 countries attended the metrology school conducted by NIST in Gaithersburg, Maryland for the Sistema Interamericana de Metrologia.
Good.
Yeah, there we go.
Good job.
SIM, as it's called, is a consortium of National Metrology Institutes, or NMIs, from the 34 member nations that make up the Organization of American States. The students were typically scientists and engineers who have recently begun working at an NMI or a National Designated Institute. They attended morning lectures on fundamental metrology topics, followed by hands-on training at NIST laboratories, and at the end of that, a final exam that tested the progress that they had made. Now, the importance of this goes beyond just exposing students to new measurement and calibration techniques and so forth, which is important certainly on a skills level. But more important really is what it gives, is that it gives students a wide international view of what is going on in metrology. According to Francisco Garcia of Chile's Center for Measurement Studies and Quality Certification, quotes, the NIST SIM Metrology School is a very effective tool that provides students a wide perspective about what metrology is, a vision that cannot be shown in most of our institutes, no matter the scope of the calibration and measurement capability. In other words, every national institute may focus more or less on certain things, or their scientists and engineers may focus on some topics more than others, and they don't necessarily get a broader view of what is happening in the world of metrology internationally. So this provides these students that view. So a broader view of metrology for sure, but even more important than that, NMIs and the people who work in NMIs, these National Metrology Institutes, Measurement Institutes, spend a lot of their time dealing with metrology folks from NMIs in other countries. So this is a chance for future NMI leaders to get to know each other ahead of time on kind of a neutral academic ground. Metrology, as we know, is really a small world, so getting to know this kind of know-how coupled with networking with student metrologists from other NMIs really lays the groundwork for tomorrow's advancements in metrology, which, I mean, in case we all forget, metrology, the science of metrology, is the basis for pretty much any kind of technological advancement in any field. So what is going on at NMIs in every country is very important actually for technological advances across the world. So important stuff, actually.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you think metrology is kind of a flat world, but there are differences. There are regional differences in how people are doing things and projects they're working on. So
right, and they have to align at some point, though. And that's
that's
why these guys interact with each other, is to make sure that standards, procedures, they even have these round-robin things where standards are sent to all the NMIs to all measure the same thing to make sure they come back, for instance, with the same results.
That's
because across the world, a kilogram's got to be a kilogram, a meter's got to be a meter. It doesn't matter where you're at. So,
exactly.
Important stuff.
Good stuff. All right, thanks, Derek. Okay, well, recently on this program, we've been talking a lot about jobs and the skills gap in the U.S. workforce, particularly within the manufacturing sector. Thorny issues persist. As we know, are schools focusing enough on STEM education? Should companies themselves be responsible for training, or is that best left to government programs and academia? Is the real dilemma less of a skills gap and more of a wage gap? And on and on and on. Well, a recent item from Knowledge at Wharton sheds some light on another question worth consideration. Does the minimum wage need to be increased? Wharton's article, The Complex Economics of America's Minimum Wage, wonders about the long-term effects of $7.25 per hour jobs here in this country. The point's well taken, but as the title of the article indicates, this is not a simple problem. Although a rising minimum wage is mostly good for most, but not all workers, small business owners would likely be hurt by any increase, especially one that might total more than 40%, as has been proposed by some legislators. That could curtail overall hiring by small businesses, which are a huge part of the economy. And you can be certain that the one thing that these businesses do not want to do is to pass those increased costs on to you and I, the customers, in the form of rising prices. It's a competitive market.
Sure.
Nobody wants to pass costs along in terms of more money for a Big Mac or for a car or whatever it may be. So, that's a real problem. So all this begs the question, I think, just who is working these kind of jobs? It's not just kids anymore, high school kids looking for pick up some spare change. Many minimum wage jobs are held by adults.
Seniors. Very often.
Seniors too. And in the case of the adults, these are in many cases the key breadwinners. And even in some cases of some seniors, these are key breadwinners in American families. And a minimum wage job, even with full-time hours, just is not going to keep those families above the poverty line. The only way these families make it is to rely on social services such as food stamps. So it can be fairly argued that the money that these companies save by paying workers such a low wage is simply passed along to you and me in the form of higher taxes to pay for those programs. So, what's the answer? Well, I think Bill Levinson was onto something recently. We talked about it, and Bill had an article about fast food workers asking for demanding higher wages. Bill's point, in short, was eventually we got to get rid of these jobs. We've got to get rid of many of these jobs. We need to do jobs like serve fast food more efficiently so that we need fewer people or maybe no people to do it. Here's an analogy. 100 or more years ago, if you wanted to dig a foundation for a large building, what did you do? You got a bunch of guys.
You went out there with a bunch of shovels.
And you started digging.
Right.
Well, it took a lot of time and it took a lot of money. Then came the advent of the steam shovel, which could dig a lot faster, a lot more efficiently, and of course, you didn't have lots of people doing those digging jobs. Well, they didn't have those jobs anymore, but you know what? Those weren't very good jobs to begin with. I mean, those weren't jobs that were going anywhere. They couldn't do it for a long time, and nobody mourned when those jobs went away, and newer, better jobs relying on the technology were created.
But I mean, those were lost jobs then,
They
right?
were lost jobs.
Those people are now out of work.
They
right?
were lost jobs, but ultimately those weren't jobs that were really contributing anything to the economy. Yes, on a micro level there was some job loss, but those people had to integrate into the workforce and do other jobs that were higher value, or else those economies, those jobs, those entire industries were going to go away anyway if there's no value in them. Right? If you can't sustainably have value and bring value to the process, they're going to go away either way, right? So the idea is to become more efficient. All right, okay. So of course, for now, these jobs aren't going away. That's an analogy, but we know a lot of these jobs aren't going away. And in the short term, we have to find a way to strike that balance between a fair wage for the workers, fair profits for owners and shareholders, and fair prices for the customers. So all those groups, I think, have to bend a little bit to find a solution for this problem. And ultimately, I said nobody wants to pass costs along to customers.
Right.
There may be some higher costs for customers if we realize that the entire cost may go down. If you're a customer and you're paying $1.99 for a Big Mac, that's great if you want a Big Mac, sure. It's cheap and it fills you up, but maybe your true cost of the Big Mac more like $4 because of the taxes you may be paying to defray the food stamps that the workers have to feed their families. It's a complex issue.
Right, and I think you can't ignore the fact, though, that this may have an adverse effect on
individuals.
On individuals and on maybe small companies.
Yeah, sure.
And I think this kind of gets, who was utilitarianism? John Mills?
John Stuart Mill.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think this almost, you hate to trot this out there, but sometimes I think you can't ignore the fact that sometimes you're going to do these things for the good of the state, the good of the nation, but that while recognizing that it may have, as you said, on a micro level, on a small level, it may have some adverse effects. But it's kind of like, so do you not do it because a small number of people is going to be hurt?
It's a very difficult. That's why I said it's a very complex problem.
Yeah.
It's being worked out, and I think that we're going to see it worked out as time goes along.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, before we get into our next feature, remember, November, this month, is World Quality Month.
Yes,
That's right, this month. It's worldwide. According to ASQ, the purpose of World Quality Month is to promote the use of quality tools in businesses and communities. Quality tools such as flowcharts and checklists, as you know, help reduce mistakes and help us produce superior products. Quality principles, Lean, for instance, let's say, can reduce headline-making errors like food safety or toy recalls or financial disruptions. So World Quality Month calls on people who use quality tools to share their knowledge by submitting their stories to illustrate the value of quality principles. If you're interested in doing that, you can do this on the World Quality Month website. The link is right below the player page down there. Also on the World Quality Month website, you can learn what other companies and even countries are doing to celebrate World Quality Month. So check out the website down there. There's actually some interesting case studies and interesting stories. And if you want to contribute a story, or maybe there's an event you want to attend, there's actually some calendars in there. Check out the website.
Yep, and as a matter of fact, of course, all the stories that Dirk and I are covering on today's show are right down there if you want to check them out, the news items as well as the feature articles. So, getting to our feature articles.
Yep.
First one this week was from the old lean dude himself, Bruce Hamilton, called Half Full or Half Empty, and that ran in Tuesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. Again, Bruce Hamilton. Now, the piece asks an important question: can management optimism sometimes be construed as complacency? And is that a bad thing? We think it's a bad thing. And why is that a bad thing? Well, Bruce Hamilton, of course, as I mentioned, is the old lean dude. He's been in this game longer than most.
That's why they call him the old
lean dude. He's been doing this for a long time. And as a matter of fact, the story he tells in this piece is about a factory that he worked in back in the 90s, the early 90s, who was one of the first companies, first organizations to be awarded the Shingo Prize back in the early 90s, which the Shingo Prize instituted, I believe, in '89. So this was 90 or 91, so they were one of the very, very first. So as you could imagine, there was a lot of interest in this at that time, this new thing getting going, and there was a lot of plant tours. They were, as they say, were like Tours R Us in those days. There had people coming in all the time and to check out what they were doing, to benchmark a little bit and to figure out what they were doing that was so successful. Well, the story that Bruce tells in this piece is they had one of these tours going on, and they had a very high-profile guest, an author of leadership books, I think, leadership author, who was very well known. And the guest was in the factory, walking around, looking at the processes. And as it happened, Bruce's team, one of Bruce's teams, was having a meeting, talking about a particular problem they were having. And you know, it was pretty contentious, as these meetings sometimes can get. If you've ever been in one of these, you know that you want to encourage openness and you want people to kind of joust a little bit and get to the root of these problems. So it was a little contentious. There was maybe some arguing and yelling, maybe even going back and forth. And at some point in there, Bruce felt the need, because of the guest. He says this was because of the guest being there. He felt the need to step up and basically say that, I think the team's made a lot of progress, and I don't think that we should lose sight of that. Now, it's important, because when we get back to this, I don't think Bruce would have said that if the guest wasn't there. I don't think that was part of the normal process of Bruce trying to lift everybody's spirits and be the good feeling guy. But he said that, and Eddie, who was one of these guys who was particularly ornery, I guess, and was a little contentious in this meeting, kind of spoke up and he said, well, I don't think we've made much progress at all, and I think that pretending that we have doesn't help anything, right? Yeah, Eddie was probably right. I mean, in the heart of this thing, Eddie was probably the guy who was most sticking true to the principles of that type of a meeting, where you are totally open and you're totally letting it rip, because you want to achieve excellence, you want to improve. And I think that it was a good point. I mean, platitudes and optimism don't help. They really don't help matters in an instance like this. You want to be the guy who's supportive. As a manager, Bruce, as the leader, wants to be supportive. But ultimately, you can't be too concerned about your team members' feelings. You want team members that don't have bruised feelings very easily. You want people to be able to be transparent and to improve. I mean, you want people that are going to push for excellence and not worry so much about hurt feelings, which I think is what Bruce was saying here, is that he maybe mistakenly tried to go the other way with us a little bit when it wasn't necessary. And the fact that the guest was there maybe perceived, it changed it a little bit than what it would have been. And this idea that, as a manager, as a leader, you can easily confuse optimism with complacency, and you have to make sure that you're skating that line carefully, and your users, your customers, your people that are working with you on the group, on the team, know that you want to drive improvement and not just lay out platitudes. I think it's really important.
Well, I'm not sure. Complacency. I sometimes wonder if that's actually the right word. I mean, I think optimism can be also construed with, you're just trying to sugarcoat things.
Right, as a typical manager. He said he felt like he was embodying that typical manager role of, oh, it's all okay.
It's all okay.
Don't worry about it, we're doing fine.
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of the guy he is. I mean, if you read his stuff, he's not that guy.
Yeah, he's not that guy, for sure.
But again, it was because the guest was there. And this is the other point I want to get to. Bruce didn't say this, but to me, what came to my mind when I read this was Hawthorne effect. Right? I was thinking
exactly the same thing. Exactly.
It's like
you want to please the guest. You want to please the people who are visiting. Yeah.
The act of being observed, having somebody there that's different, it changes the organism in some way by injecting this other thing there, changes it, and it makes you do things you wouldn't normally do. As I say, Bruce would probably never in a million years be in the middle of a contentious meeting that probably was getting to some good stuff. It probably was uncovering some really important stuff because there was passion there, and that if people are passionate about it, something that needs to be fixed. He never would step back and say, well, let's keep the long view here and be happy about what we've achieved.
This is tough because I think as a manager, you also want you want your troops to be encouraged. You want them to be up, and I think you also don't want to be kind of a Debbie Downer or feel like. I think there's this struggle, and heck, we have it happen here.
Sure.
Is where you're trying to. You want to be honest with how things are going, how a project is going, or whatnot. You want to be honest, but at the same time, you don't want to be negative, and so sometimes maybe you lean too far towards the optimism side.
You can.
Too far, so that you're painting this rosy picture that doesn't even actually exist. But then on the flip side, how do you be honest without making everybody feel like, oh my gosh,
I think you err on the side of realism at all times. I mean, you're optimistic if optimism is called for. I think what he was trying to do there was clearly paper over something for the good of the guest. He was trying to make the guest feel like, because he said that he could see the guest was getting a little upset and maybe was worrying if this was really the way it works. So it was because of that, and that to me is the key thing. What reasons are you doing it for?
Right.
If you're optimistic because you feel like there's cause for optimism and that you want some perspective to be brought into the picture, that's great. You don't want to be that manager who is Pollyanna and is turning a blind eye towards real problems.
Right.
That to me is the differentiator. Are they problems that need to be addressed, need to be brought up? Are you doing that, or are you turning a blind eye? And that's really where the decision point, I think, comes in this.
Okay.
Good piece by Bruce. Really, always good stuff by Bruce. And Bruce is doing a seminar, I believe, in a few weeks.
Yes, and we were going to get him on the show. He couldn't come on the show, and we were going to have a link to a seminar, but we didn't link it because he wasn't coming on the show.
Okay. But it's happening. But
yes, he has a seminar.
Go out to the GMBP, I believe it is.
The Greater Boston
Manufacturing
GBM.
Anyway,
GBMP.
Check out his article.
We're really helping you out here.
Check out Bruce's article. Visit his site and check out that seminar because it's good stuff. Bruce is excellent lean lean professional. He's like I said, been in this field for a long time. Got a lot of good stuff. So
that was
check that out.
Useful piece of information we just gave you. All right. Okay. Well, everyone wants a strategy.
Yep.
Everyone wants their stuff to be strategic. Strategic plan, strategic facilities expansion, strategic HR sourcing, strategic restroom cleaning schedule.
Yeah, that's my responsibility.
The word strategy is being abused so badly, it needs counseling.
That's awesome.
There you go. That's the way Mike Figliolo starts his column, Strategic Planning.
Really well written piece.
It is. Mike Figliolo is one of our newer columnists. Actually, he has a blog, and we repost from his blog. He's got some good stuff. Well, what Figliolo is saying here is you can't have a strategy without first having a goal and a vision. Otherwise, your team will have no idea what it's supposed to do to achieve that strategy. You have to provide a goal and a vision, and then clearly lay out the competitive environment. Have to know what your competition is like, where your strengths are, how you will compete, and what initiatives you'll pursue. And then do it, says Figliolo. This was really a crazy, timely article for us because we are, right now, as we speak, kind of revamping our whole mission and vision statement. And the reason for, and let me first of all say, mission and vision statements, I used to just, honestly, I just kind of thought it's like, it's a thing a company does. It's just feel good kind of, yeah, you know, we want to do this, that, and the other, and whatever, you know. And I honestly didn't pay that much attention to them. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been having meetings to talk about this, and it was pointed out to me by my fellow co-workers, not managers by the way, but my fellow co-workers, that no, you got it all wrong. And I'll get to why I've got it all wrong in just one second. First of all, a little bit of history. As most of you know, we went from being a monthly print magazine to electronic media only, what, 4.5 years ago?
It's going to be 5 years ago.
Almost 5 years. Okay. In the process of doing that, we jumped, you know, face first into e-media, and if any of you have been involved in that, you know it is a constantly changing landscape. Technology is changing, what the advertisers want is changing, what the readers want is changing. There's emails, there's video, there's audio, I mean everything you can imagine. And we spent several years dabbling in all of it. In the process, I feel, and I think probably most of us here, all 8 or 9 of us, small company, would agree, we kind of lost track of what our mission really was. I mean, we never like totally lost it, but I think it was very ill-defined at one point because we were just kind of spread all over the place.
I think a lot of management assumed that it was known, which is a key mistake that you make when talking about vision and mission statements, is the assumption everybody knows what we're doing, everybody knows why we're doing it. Well, no, not necessarily.
Right.
And that's the key issue here is, are you properly defining for all your stakeholders, all your teammates, what you're in this for, why you're doing it, why you get up in the morning and come into the office, why? Exactly,
and the reason that's important, and we'll get to that in just one second, is, well, we'll get to it with that. Let me tell you what this is kind of our working mission statement. We're not exactly done with it just yet, but this is kind of what we're working with right now. This is QD's mission right now. And remember, the way I define a mission statement is kind of, your mission statement is what are you currently doing? What is your day-to-day goal, right? To provide a platform for sharing expert commentary, best practices, and relevant industry resources to assist our readers in their continuous quest for excellence. Okay, so that's where we want to be right now. What our vision is, we're still hashing that out. But Figliolo says when you create your vision statement, it's got to be kind of, in a way, it's got to be kind of grandiose. It's got to be out there. It's got to be achievable, but it's got to be out there. You really have, you want to be reaching. And he gives an example of Amazon. Here's Amazon's vision statement. Our vision is to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, to build a place where people can come to find and discover anything they might want to buy online. So that's pretty out there.
And you know what? But it defines what Amazon's about. I would define Amazon that way. Sure.
Right.
Makes sense.
Exactly. So now you've got your mission, you've got your vision. So what do you want to do now? So now, what do you want to do with this? Well, the first thing, you want to make sure your projects going forward, you want to make sure your projects align with that mission and vision. And we've actually done this here, where we have an editorial idea, not necessarily a story, well, sometimes a story. You have a story, or you have just a thrust that we want to have editorially, or maybe some new advertiser program we're thinking of. And it's like, okay, we've actually done this. Does it align with what our mission and vision statement are? Does this make sense? If it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't align, then you might want to revisit it and go, maybe we shouldn't be doing this because it doesn't align with what our mission and vision, or maybe we need to revamp it in some way to make sure it does align.
Well, and align for who? I mean, that's the thing. You always have to keep in mind that one group, and in our case, it really is two groups of people that matter above all others, and that is your customers. I mean, we have customers. We have a lot of different customers, but essentially, we have readers and we have advertisers. We have people. We have partners, and we have readers, and that alignment and understanding how your mission and vision align with what your customers want and what they need and how you can add value to what they do every day. That's the secret sauce. That's what really matters.
And I think that has to be incorporated, who your customers are, and it doesn't show up here in Amazon so much. But I think in other mission and vision statements that I've read, who the customers are is actually part of that mission and vision statement, so that you're actually saying in there, who are we trying to provide value for? Not only ourselves, because certainly we want to provide value for ourselves, but all of your stakeholders, everybody who's involved with everything that you touch, how that needs to be included, I think, in your mission and vision statement, so you're constantly reminded who it is you're serving. So after you've done that, you need to understand, how are you going to compete? At what level are you going to compete on? You need to know your strengths and weaknesses. You need to know your competition's strengths and weaknesses, because you really want to compete in an arena or on a level where you know you're going to succeed. It doesn't make sense to go up against somebody who, on a particular level where you know you're probably not going to make much inroads. So for instance, we're a small company. We've got shallow pockets. We don't look very often at expensive projects. We look at small, innovative, inexpensive projects that give us incremental growth. That's the way we have to work because of the size of our company. Your company may be the same. So you've laid out your mission and vision. You know how you're going to compete. Now it's time to start rolling out the projects. You don't do that. You don't do the projects first and hope they align. You have your mission and vision. You have how you're going to compete. Now you start coming up with your projects, your initiatives. You make sure that they align with your mission and vision, and then you start rolling out your projects. And you make sure that you don't roll out too many. We've got a bunch of really innovative people here. We have come up with dozens of projects, but we don't have the manpower to go for all of them at once, so you have to pick and choose the ones that you can achieve in a reasonable amount of time, prioritize them, go after those projects, and then move on. Figlioli was saying that is where really, that is really how you should roll out what the strategies and tactics are for a company. You got to start from the bottom up. You got to start with your mission and vision statement. Everything rolls up from that. It doesn't just feel good. Your mission and vision statement really are the basis of which you're going to build your company strategies going forward.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And
it seems pretty basic, but I mean, it makes sense when you go through and read it.
we all stub our toe on that, because I mean, it's the complexity of running an organization, even a small one, is such that you want to do everything at all times, but like you say, you got to pick and choose. You have to understand what you can achieve. And what your customers want. I mean, that's ultimately, to me, that's what I'm always thinking about.
And I got to say, it was an interesting exercise. And I wasn't the one who did it. We were I can't remember what it was in the editorial bullpen a couple weeks ago. We were talking about I think it was a story idea, actually. And I can't remember, it was either Taryn or Laurel, I think, that said, well, and we were talking about whether we should run the story. And somebody said, well, does that story align with our mission statement at the time? And I went, wow, that was interesting. And we actually said, well, does it provide a valuable resource? Does it provide useful commentary? In other words, what is the reader going to get out of it? Right. If the reader's going to get something out of it, well then, sure. It makes sense to do. If they're not going to get anything out of it, well, then you have to move on. Well, would the advertiser get something out of it? And if the advertiser does, well, how much are you going to weigh what the advertiser gets out of it versus what the reader gets out? It's interesting.
Well, and then you're getting down in the level of tactics at a certain level. And strategy and tactics sometimes are very difficult to know which realm you're in, but it's good to keep both of them in mind. Excellent article by Mike Figliolo.
It was good.
And I'm certainly hoping we have more from Mike going forward in QDD and cover on this show, because he really, really well written.
Oh, by the way, just a little side note, he recently had a heart attack.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
He was at his computer working, I think he said. And if you find Mike Figliolo's blog, he has actually somewhat amusing write-up on this whole thing.
Wow.
Went to the hospital, happened to be a hospital that's one of his clients.
Oh.
And he's got this whole thing that goes through and is very upbeat, but yeah, he had a heart attack.
Wow, I did not
It was
know
about
that.
2 weeks ago.
Well, get better, Mike.
Yeah,
'cause,
exactly.
We want to see more stuff from you going forward.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's our show for the week. But before we go, we'd like to, of course, thank today's sponsor, Hexagon Metrology. Hexagon Metrology is committed to helping you control your processes, enhance the quality of your products, and increase efficiencies. They empower you to stay one step ahead of a changing world with their wide range of product offerings, nearly 200 years of expertise, and an extensive support network. Hexagon Metrology, where quality comes together. For more information, just click on the banner ad just below or just to the right of our player page right down there.
That's right.
Okay.
Before we close, no QDL next week
No QDL
because
next week.
that is Thanksgiving Thanksgiving holiday.
Thanksgiving week, so no QDL, no QDD on Thursday or Friday, of course, but we'll have 3 great days of QDD for you Monday through Wednesday next week, and we'll see you back here on QDL on December 6th, I believe that is.
I think that would sound something like
whatever that first Friday of December is, we'll see you back here for QDL.
That's right. And remember, happy Quality Month. Be sure to go out to the ASQ's World Quality Month website down there, linked below the page. So once again, thanks to all of you for joining us today at Quality Digest Live, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
That's right. Have a great weekend and a great Thanksgiving holiday.
That's right.
See ya.